None of this would have ever happened if I hadn't stepped on the big boys' toes. As long as I was going after the crooks that didn't have badges, I was everybody's hero.
This is the Vic Feazell Show podcast, hosted by Vic Feazell and Jonathan Zimick.
I'll tell you what I am concerned about, and that is if Congress and the judiciary doesn't do something soon about the FBI and the Justice Department, we are on our way to becoming a fascist nation and a police state. Our founding fathers never intended us to have a national police force who could just decide to go after people they didn't like. And that's what RICO and mail fraud and some of these other statutes have been used for. Something's got to be done to change that around, or we will not be a free people much longer.
God, Vic, that is a powerful speech you gave.
Thanks, Jonathan, and I meant every word of it. Those were excerpts from my speech that I gave on the federal courthouse steps in Austin, Texas, within minutes of being found not guilty. I was concerned then, and I'm still concerned today about how the deep state can step into the government and just take control and do what they want to with limitless budget and with no accountability, just to go after people they don't like.
Well, and people like you, Vic.
People like me.
The outliers, the people who stand up for what's right.
Anybody who stands up for what's right. And sometimes they do it to just somebody to make a scapegoat out of them. Right. Oh, we've got this crime we need to get solved, so we'll make a scapegoat out of them. And they take off with no accountability, no interest in justice. Some of these people need to get down on their knees and pray and say, God, give me an idea of what justice is, because I ain't doing it.
Right.
Because they're not. And by deep state, don't get me wrong, I'm not talking about these guys sitting around wearing the tinfoil hats.
What's wrong with my tinfoil hat, Vic?
Well, Jonathan, you look good in it. But I mean the ones in the basement looking for the UFOs, and there may be UFOs, I don't know. But I'm just talking about what I mean when I say deep state. And I'm talking about people inside the government and outside the government with limitless budgets, lots of power, and no accountability, thinking that they are God-called to direct our future.
Right.
And sometimes that future is down an awful rabbit hole that's lined with barbed wire. Right. And it's just wrong. I don't know if it's the puppet master or the cabal, or if we're just talking about runaway bureaucracy.
Right.
But people, there are folks who have evil in their hearts. They can't help it. They're born that way, and they don't even see it. When Jesus would yell at the Pharisees across the street, you know, he was nice to everybody. He was nice to everybody from the thieves to the prostitutes. But when he saw one of these holier-than-thou Pharisees across the street, he'd point at them and almost pick a fight with them. Well, we're talking about Pharisees. We're talking about people who think they're holier than everybody else. Yeah. And they're not. They're just some mean people out there working against your interests. Listeners, listen to me. They're working against your interest. Don't vote based on a knee-jerk reaction. Vote on the facts. And I'm telling you, unless you know them, unless you know they're a Lloyd Doggett or a Kirk Watson or a Donna Howard or some of those who have stood up and taken it in the face for the consumer, you know, been kicked around for the consumer, had their congressional lines and legislative districts redrawn, trying to keep them out, but they keep getting reelected. Unless they're like those guys who are standing up for you, vote against them. If their last name is Sessions, vote against them. If they've got anything to do with Karl Rove, vote against them, because we're talking about black hat operations there. We're talking about cloak and dagger. And if you don't believe me, Google some of these people and read some of the outlandish, god-awful things they've said that are not in your best interest. Vote against them.
I love it. And there's your power in the vote.
Power in the vote.
Love
power to the people. It's time we take power back to the people. I saw this great cartoon with, it was a crowd drawn, and there was a guy standing in front of him with a whip, and he had his whip raised, and everybody was down. Then he had his whip raised, and one person was standing up.
Yeah.
Then he had his hip raised, and several people were standing up, but his whip was down by his side. Then everybody was standing up and he was bowing down to them. Our leaders in government used to be called government servants. And now they feel like they're lifetime royalty, able to pick your pocket and you not be able to do anything about it. So folks, vote intelligently. Don't vote knee-jerk, and be looking for the signs of the deep state in everything from national politics to your local prosecutions. Because I'm telling you, we have it operating in our county courthouses around this state where innocent people are being sent to jail every day, every week. And you got prosecutors who, I got to give them credit, they're overworked. But some of them just don't give a damn. They won't even look at the file. They won't even look at the case. They'd rather say, well, go to trial and beat me. Well, go to trial, and if you lose, appeal. Well, they ought to be looking at it and saying, what serves justice? Look at that statue up on the top of the courthouse with the scales and the blindfold. What serves justice? You're not down there to just rank up numbers, to get your numbers higher. You're there to see that justice is served. Same with our police departments and our sheriff's departments. You're not there just to pick on people you don't like. It used to be the motto of the police departments were to protect and to serve. Whatever happened to that? Where's the protection? Where's the service? All we see now is harassment. We see little schoolyard bullies now wearing police uniforms, tasing people, killing people, pulling over a car just because it's got a couple black people in it. And they're saying, oh man, I bet there's weed in there. And we need to look at legalizing weed. It would cut down on the violence on the streets between the police and our citizens. It would cut down on the polarization of our citizens against the police and vice versa. Whatever happened to protect and serve? Now it's us versus them. Let's not do that. Open your hearts. Our police department should not be just another street gang wearing a different color. They should be helping. They should be bringing peace. Same with our DA's office. Our DA's office shouldn't be the lawyer for the police. Our DA's office should be the buffer between the police and the citizen, the buffer between the criminal and the citizen, doing justice no matter who it pisses off. Drop that case if it's not worthy of prosecution. It's not fair to ruin a man's life, to ruin his bank account, to put his family through misery just because you think you might can rack up a win. Come on, people. Let's get on our knees and do some real praying and ask for God to give us a sense of justice and open our hearts and open our minds. That's my definition of deep state, Jonathan.
Well, amen. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah. Pass the plate. Keep those tithes and offerings coming in so we can keep this valuable ministry on the air. Buy some coffee.
Oh, coffee's coming.
Coffee's coming. Hey, I heard from
But the
MC
t-shirts.
Yogi.
T-shirts.
Nick.
Huh? Yeah. Tell me about that.
Yeah. He said he wanted the whole beans. I told you Nick was a whole bean guy.
I gotta be honest, I'm a ground bean guy. I want it ground so I can just put it directly in the filter and just go.
See, and I think that's kind of lazy.
Oh, come on. I mean,
I like to have my beans put in there each morning fresh and ground fresh for that pot.
well, look at you.
Yeah, I've always been that way.
Well,
But I'm an old hippie. I used to grow my own okra and tomatoes and everything else.
well, there you go. On our website, we will have the option, though, when you get your coffee to have ground or whole beans.
Ground or whole. So
be
if
like Jonathan and get yourself some ground, or be like Vic and get yourself the whole bean.
well, Vic and MC Yogi, I'm in good company because I love that guy. And if you haven't Googled his music yet, do it. Heaven is Here will open your heart. Traveling the Road Home will open your heart and mind. It's just wonderful music. Oh, and Breathe Deep. He gave us the rights to use that on this podcast. We ought to use it more. Breathe deep, deep breath. Inhale, exhale to release the stress.
Every time you say that, I think of the Moody Blues.
The Moody Blues?
Breathe deep the gathering gloom. Watch
Yeah.
lights fade from across the room.
No, his is different. His is a message of light and wisdom and love and forgiveness. Yeah.
Fair.
And releasing the stress, because everybody today
Oh, man,
is
stress
under
to the gills.
so much stress. So much stress. We do too much. Who had the slogan, just do it? Nike?
Nike?
Yeah, well, my slogan is just don't do it. Just don't do it. Don't do it. Stay home.
Just
Stay home. Watch Netflix. Watch The Confession Killer. Watch something else good on TV. Go out and ride bikes with your kids.
There you
go
go.
to the softball game. Play cards with your wife, whatever. But quit doing all that expensive punching the ticket and keeping you in debt and using that plastic so that those corporation banks can make a slave out of you. Spike Lee's production company is called 40 Acres and a Mule because that's what the Reconstructionists were offering all the slaves after the Civil War, 40 acres and a mule. And they didn't get to keep that 40 acres and a mule very long, and most of them never got it,
Jeez.
Well, that's what they're doing to us now with this credit card debt. When you're paying, when a bank will pay you 1% or 2% on your savings and a credit card is charging you 18% plus, you are a slave.
Remember that old Tennessee Earl Ford song?
15 tons. What do you get? Another day older and deeper in debt. St. Peter, don't take me because I can't go. I owe my soul to the company store.
That's it. That's
it. I used to listen to him when I was a little kid, and he's absolutely right. You go from slave to sharecropper, and with this plastic back to slave.
No.
And with wages what they are.
Yeah.
And
compared to cost of living,
and our jobs being exported overseas. I remember when General Tire closed in Waco, it broke so many hearts. 5,000 wage earners were employed out there.
Wow.
And they said, hey guys, we're sending all this work to the Philippines. We can get little kids to operate these plants. They lose an arm, they won't sue us. And then we can ship these tires back and sell it to the consumers, and you guys are out of a job. And that's what happened to 5,000 good voting.
That's a lot of people in a town of this size, Vic.
A lot of people. And that was the second big hit. The first big hit was when James Connolly Air Base closed. Wow, that put a lot of people out of work, too. Because out at where the technical college is now, that used to be James Connolly Air Base.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Crazy times.
Crazy times.
Well, talking about crazy times, do you want to jump into this thing?
Yeah, I do. We're going to pick back up on the interview that we did with my ex-wife, Bernie.
Yes.
When she was talking about the day I was arrested.
Yes.
And the search of our house, where 12 or 14 agents converged on our house and just ransacked it. Part of their intimidation attempt. When they killed our dog. When they scared the life out of my poor little boy, Greg. 4 years old, and showing him a gun and making him get in the car and not letting him sit with his mama, and all the stuff that went on. And then what they were doing to me at the courthouse, arresting me, making me do the perp walk, taking me to the courthouse and holding me over at the federal courthouse while 12 agents searched every piece of paper in the DA's office.
That's crazy.
And they still couldn't come up with anything to convict me with. It was just a show.
Yeah.
It was just a show. Dog and pony show. They were hoping to find something on me. They had nothing and were hoping to find something. And thank God I'd either been too clean or too busy to get in trouble.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Idle hands become the devil's workshop.
Yeah, that's true. My mom used to tell me that all the time.
Is that right?
Boy, she kept my butt busy all the time. And I think I've mentioned before, whenever I do a killer cross-examination, I always bow my head and go, thank you, Mom. Because she's the one who taught me how to do it.
Is that right?
Oh, yeah. I was like, come on, answer me, Vic. It don't matter what you say. You say anything. I'll show you where you're wrong.
Oh, God.
And that's how I can do with a witness. Just answer it. I don't care what you say. It's wrong. I'll show you how it's wrong. Yeah.
Perfect.
But I just take cases, and criminal cases, the people I believe in.
Sure.
And people I think are being treated unjustly. And the same with the car wreck cases, because the insurance companies have become such bullies themselves, because they have the protection of the Supreme Court of Texas. They have the protection of the Texas legislature in their corner, rooting for them. And every time the plaintiff, every time the consumer makes any bit of progress, they go and write a case or pass a new law to take that little bit of progress away. And people, you are being screwed left and right. You're being screwed by that politician who shakes your hand and smiles at you, pats you on the back and calls you buddy. Don't you believe it. If they're in there, you know, and you don't already know them and believe in them that they're for you, vote against them. And my personal thing, find out if they're for legalizing weed. We want to help our economy. Oh my goodness. It would support our school system. It would take burdens off the backs of regular taxpayers. And with the accoutrement sales that go along with it, pipes, rolling papers, bongs, munchies, all kinds of stuff, and all the little stores that would pop up, and the CBD oil that they're already proven, you know, is curing cancer.
Yeah.
Yet you've got politicians who say, no, you can't have it because we want you to take opioids.
Yeah.
No, you can't have it because we want you to take these expensive cancer treatments. No, you can't have it because it might be good for you and it might put some of my rich crook friends out of business. That's the deep state I'm talking about. I'm not talking about the black helicopters, although if we go much longer, you know, I don't agree with much anything Alex Jones says. I don't. I knew Alex back when he was sane. I'd love to be on his show sometime, just maybe do some therapy with him, because I still love Alex Jones, but it's not that tinfoil hat stuff. Although I got to tell you, he could be a voice crying in the wilderness if we don't start turning this around soon. You know, because if the people finally get enough, we've pushed far enough that we've just had enough, well, the black helicopters could show up. And I'm telling you, you're talking to a guy who's been led away in handcuffs just because I ticked off the wrong people.
Yeah,
so,
everybody knows.
You want to go back to Bernie's interview?
Yes, let's get back to it.
Anything you want to share with us first? Let's share our exciting news now and share it again at the end of the show.
Well, exciting in that we have a bunch of great guests getting lined up. And the first one will be here in just over a week. And that is Mr. Jason Baldwin.
Yeah, we'll be interviewing him just over a week, probably be on the following week.
He's coming up to the office to hang out with us and talk biz.
Tell us about who Jason is.
So Jason was one of the West Memphis Three, and they were arrested for the supposed homicides of three young kids in West Memphis, Arkansas. And it's an absolutely insane story. They were finally let out just in the 2000s. And they took what is known as Alfred pleas, which basically says, oh, we're guilty, but they're going to let us out anyways.
And they've been locked up for 18 or 20 years.
18 and a half years.
Yeah.
And there was three of them. Two of them got life sentences, and one was put on death row.
Yeah.
So it's a crazy story, and I can't wait to hear it from that point of view, because it's so insane, Vic.
And those guys were so innocent. Yeah. I have watched the movie Paradise Lost, and this weekend I watched Peter Jackson. You know, he did Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, he did a whole one.
And he came out and did one called West of Memphis. Wow. And it brings it through conclusion. It brings and shows them getting out of, finally getting out of prison. I was sitting there watching it thinking, these boys are going to have to go to federal court getting relief. But thank God, the state court in Arkansas, the state Supreme Court, they had more common sense and more balls than the state court in Stephen Avery's case. Right. I'm telling you, if I had been on the court in Stephen Avery's case, that man would have gotten a new trial. There are just too many things wrong with that conviction.
Yeah.
When I pick a jury now, I'm going to ask, has anybody seen Making of a Murder? And if they have, I'm going to say, you think Stephen Avery is guilty or innocent? If they say guilty, I don't want them on my jury.
There you go.
Man. I don't. They got
actually
closed
a great
minds.
more dire question.
They got closed minds. And just like these three young men, the two with Jason Baldwin. You know, you Google it, a lot of Google people still think they're guilty.
Yeah, man.
And there's not a shred of evidence that they did it. Oh, well, these were satanic murders because of, look at these forms of mutilation. And then they were able to prove later that the mutilation was from turtle bites. You know?
Crazy, man.
I've seen that kind of thing around McLennan County because they used to dump the bodies in some of the sinkholes around here that have water in them, and then during the winter, and then in the summer they dry up. Would find it, and similar kind of things. Yeah. And it was turtles. Now maybe they were satanic turtles, but they had nothing to do with these three young defendants.
Yeah.
And once you take it out of the satanic thing, that's what made them look at Damien. And had it not been for the satanic twist to it,
right?
You know, which was just a fad back in those days, it's just total BS.
Yeah, man.
they'd have never looked at him.
Correct.
And now it's looking so obvious that one of the boy's abusive fathers did it.
Right. Right.
I mean, if I were a prosecutor up there, I could convict him with the evidence they've got on him right now. And they need to quit saying that these boys are guilty.
Yeah, man.
What that DA up there has done, I could tell looking in his eyes when he was saying, well, I still think they're guilty. He was lying.
Yeah.
And if he were on the witness stand, 20 minutes, I'd get him admitting he was lying. So anyway, let's
that's
pick
some
back
upcoming
up
stuff.
with Bernie. My
do it.
ex-wife, she lived it. She suffered it right along with me. And she's still suffering over the death of our sweet son, Gregory.
I have to say the person they really hurt the worst was Greg.
I know.
Because you can have how many children go to a psychologist and they're like, well, what's wrong? Well, we don't know what's wrong. Well, what's wrong was he got taken out of an FBI. He got taken out of the kettle by people with guns that he saw the guns, and they made him go out, and it affected him. And Sabra Hitchcock was his psychologist, and we took her to him, and all he would do over and over is draw pictures of stick men with badges and guns over and over and over again. And finally she said, what would make you feel better? Why are you so scared at night? He said, I want a gun. And remember, you took him to the toy shop and you bought him a gun.
A toy gun, yes.
A toy gun, and he slept with it after that.
Yes.
And you know I hated guns, so we didn't have a gun. I wouldn't let you buy him a toy gun, ever.
Not until
and
then.
Then she said, you got to go buy this kid a gun. So we bought him a gun. You remember that?
I do. The little toy gun. I also remember the pictures that he drew for Sabra of what he was afraid of. And every picture he drew was the scary, mean men with guns coming back to the house.
It was terrible for him. And then, of course, every day there was no regular programming anymore, and he had to see it over and over. And then you were on. Remember, you were on probation, and you had to call a probation officer.
Oh, I went on probation. I was out on bond, but they assigned a probation officer to me that I had to call every week, a pretrial officer. Yeah. And
we had to call him to go see my mama.
To go see your mother, I had to call him any time I was going to go out of county and get their permission. To go see your mother in Taylor, even to go see one of my own lawyers, Jeff Kearney, in Fort Worth, because Jeff was helping Gary with all the pretrial stuff. And I would have to get their permission to go visit my lawyer in Fort Worth or to visit your mom in Taylor.
Do you remember, too, that the day they arrested you, we kept hearing something, and we didn't know if Harwell was out in his chopper or what, but it was the GPS flying an airplane in circles over our house like we were really going somewhere.
Yeah.
Remember?
I don't think you meant to say Harwell, because Jack was always on our side.
Oh, no, Jack was on our side. We were laughing about it because, Jack and Captain Dan would like to take that plane out every once in a while.
Oh, the
know?
helicopter. Yeah, I remember. Yes. Yes.
But this was they were flying around our house. We had no passport, but they were for sure we were going to make a break for it. But they had it fixed to where they thought you would either run or kill yourself.
Yes. Remember, we got that profile they had done on me, that FBI profile from Quantico.
Yep.
After I was found not guilty, we didn't have that before. But after I was found not guilty, we were able to start subpoenaing their records. And they had done a profile on me that said I would either run or kill myself.
Well, they spent so much money just talking to one another and being so stupid. The day that you were acquitted, you said, now listen to me. When they find me not guilty of the first thing, don't worry about the second, because it's over. And when we got there, well, it was the day of closing argument, I believe,
Yeah,
Well, no, it
because
was-
if they found me not guilty of one, they had to have found me not guilty of the other. Yes.
Yeah, the Supreme Court of the United States had dropped all mail charges for everybody all over the world, and they did that for 30 days. That's how people can call it luck or serendipity or God, but God threw out your mail fraud charges, which I thought was kind of funny considering you never even mailed anything. They were so stupid.
And it wouldn't have mattered because to be found not guilty of one would have been not guilty of the other.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the jury just poured out and just all just grabbed you, and we couldn't even get to you because the jury was all over you. And the judge said that everyone had to be quiet, or he was going to throw us all out.
Yeah.
And no one would be quiet. Everyone screamed and hollered and cried, and the judge gave up. And it was beautiful. And Walter Smith sniveled out somewhere and left.
Yeah, I remember that. Walter Smith was there to see me be let off in handcuffs. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Walter was just a little charmer.
Yeah, Judge Walter Smith from Waco, who is now off the bench because it came out that he had been sexually harassing every woman that ever worked for him.
Yeah, all you had to do was try to bend over at the water fountain, and he was right there behind you. You know, he's a real prince.
It's all true. Person. It's documented. It was in the newspaper. He had to leave the bench in shame. After
remember,
pointing the finger
Jay
at me.
talked about this. There was people loved you. See, they loved you, and they didn't care, and it was almost frightening how much they loved you. People would fight about you.
I remember. Do you remember David Jordan? David Jordan's interview when he was subpoenaed to the grand jury, and he came or something. I don't remember why, but he came out. Or he had been at the trial. But remember, David was a former Marine and was an assistant DA. And he said, "What's going on in that courthouse makes me so angry. I want to lock and load and march on this place." I had some very loyal supporters.
We were sitting there, and there had been a lunch break, and people were filing back into the courtroom for lunch, after lunch. And so Jack Frales was there. He was the prosecutor, and you were there, and I were there. We were all there, but the crowd hadn't come in yet. And the door opened, and in walked at least 20 older women wearing short white skirts with petticoats and stars on them. There had been a square dance contest from all over the state in Austin, and the square dancers all took time out to come and see you and support you in trial. Do you remember?
I do.
So here comes all these women in short skirts and boots, and they had petticoats, and as they walked, their petticoats moved back and forth and back and forth the same way, and Jack Frales just about died.
I remember he called us the Jim and Tammy Baker show.
Yeah, he called us Jim. Yeah, and then remember, I smoked like a chimney. I was so nervous. I smoked cigarettes like a fiend. And so when I wasn't smoking cigarettes, I was sucking on Jolly Ranchers. You remember?
Yes.
And I tried to be quiet unwrapping them. And Jack Frales hated me so much that he made the U.S. Marshals do a candy check. They had to go and examine everyone to see if they had candy. You remember?
I do. Yes. They started searching people for candy.
He did a candy sweep because of me. I was so upset. Oh, my God. Yeah, I think about that, but then I think about what all it did to Greg and how it never left him. It never left him.
He was afraid. He was afraid to go to sleep at night because he was afraid those men would come back. I bought him the little toy gun, but that didn't help. Tell about when you found the bottle of NyQuil in his room. He was 5.
Greg boy had trouble sleeping because he would dream about the black-hearted bad guys coming to get him, and that was the FBI. And he never could get past it. And worse than that was that he would sleep at night and see you handcuffed over and over, and he would check on you because he was afraid they were going to come back and take you away again and never bring you back. And so he got to where he was afraid to sleep. And I didn't know it, and you didn't know it. But we would buy NyQuil if someone was sick, and so we had NyQuil in the house, and then it disappeared. And then I went to his room and found that he had been drinking NyQuil. He had drank all the NyQuil. And it became obvious that we had missed the fact that our son was on NyQuil every night to try to soothe the pain because he was afraid of sleep. Because he was afraid that the cops would come and get us all again. And so that's where it started, with NyQuil.
Yeah. I know this is hard.
Well, I just, what prepares you? What on earth prepares you for a little boy, and he's already a NyQuil addict, and you had no idea? He couldn't sleep. And a lot of times he would sleep with us, and he would be frightened, and we didn't know how to make it stop. And we took him to doctor after doctor after doctor.
And then after he was older, it was rehab after rehab after rehab. And it was always the same issue. And he was such a wonderful boy. He was a genius. He was smart, but every once in a while the fear would grip him, and he would start self-medicating. It wasn't like he self-medicated all the time. It just ever so often. It seemed to be like a 6-month cycle.
September was always horrible.
September.
It was like I think what they call a fugue.
Yeah, because it's September when they arrested me.
And I would always just think, oh my God, September's coming. September was horrible always. And then he got hit by the car, and that pretty much was the end of it all.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that was the end. That was 2013?
I think so.
And that did it. Whatever capacity he had to stop, once he had brain surgery and every bone in his body broken, it was no way out. There was a complete downhill slide. He tried, and he wanted to be a better man for his kids. And he would talk about it, and he would promise to be a better man. And I believe he wanted to be, but he hated himself, and he couldn't, and he finally he's gone.
Do you feel like talking about Jan Patterson?
Oh, I love talking about Jan Patterson.
What do you remember about Jan Patterson?
But she had ugly teeth. I remember that she made me angry in Cleburne because you were real cute back then. You were, and you had it, and you had swagger, and everybody liked you, and you were popular. And Cleburne was dry. Okay, and I don't drink.
Yes.
Everybody who knows me knows I do not drink. Don't like it. And Jan Patterson just had it in her head that you had to go with her to another county and drink. And it made me jealous.
That's when I was up there trying the Deeb case. I told you about that, and I couldn't figure out why she wanted me to go have a drink with her. And then it was like,
I thought she was, getting all randy with you because she wasn't a cute thing, and I was like a little mad about it. She was like, "Oh, come on, let's just drive over there and get us a drink. It's only a few miles away." And she wasn't inviting me to go get a drink.
Then after it was real clear that I was not going to go talk with her, that's when she suddenly got angry and said, Well, I just want to tell you, stay out of the Lucas thing, because
I remember.
it had just started leaking out that we were going to look into the Lucas confessions.
She said, he said, you stay out of that Lucas thing. I'm here to tell you right now, you stay out of it, because if you don't, you'll regret it.
Yeah, I was
and
told
see,
that.
She was angry, and I thought she was just angry because you had rebuffed her advances for this drink.
Well, and I was curious about how she knew we were looking into Lucas. We didn't know then that Ron Border was a snitch in our office. You know, he had been coming around offering to help Ned Butler with some of the cases Ned was working, but they had heard we were looking into Lucas, and he was trying to find out about that, and he reported that directly back to Bob Prince and to Colonel Jim Adams. When you watched the documentary, Bernie, do you remember the part where Bob Prince basically confesses to what they did? He says he says to the camera, well, as far as I was concerned, if Vic Feazell was against us, against the Rangers, then he was no better. He was no better than people I've sent to prison.
Here's what sticks out to me, and I'd like to ask this of the public. I have a public question. Who on earth would allow, what company on earth would allow that man to get up there and say that? How could the Rangers just let him get up there and say that? I mean, the thing of it is that they haven't changed. I would not allow Bob Prince to get up there and say that, because the man proved everything we have accused him of for 40 years. He was the epitome of everything lousy with law enforcement. His face, his demeanor. He looked like Hellboy without the horns.
Oh, my God, you're right.
He does, Hellboy. But let me tell you, I looked at him and I thought, no wonder my son couldn't sleep at night. He saw this man. This man was all over us. Not to mention Boutwell.
Yeah, they were on TV bad-mouthing me all the time. You couldn't turn the TV on. Couldn't do
and we couldn't go out to eat because they'd come over and chew us out everywhere we went. And we couldn't shop groceries because, Lord knows, for some reason, the cucumber section just attracted people who wanted to tell you off.
It was a hard time. It was a very hard time.
It was a terrible time. Yeah. I don't forget the people who were kind to me back then.
And I want
that meant a lot for me.
I want to thank all because we weren't totally abandoned. I want to thank all the people who were kind, all the people who voted for me under indictment and reelected me and put me back in office with criminal charges pending against me. The people in Waco knew what was going on. It was just some of the mean ones that wanted to be bad to us. And then after I won the re-election, that's when the government decided they couldn't get a fair trial in Waco and made us have to stage it down in Austin.
Well, not just that, Vic. They're so bitter over their stupid decision of going after you, which they just made the decision to do it. They had no reason to do it. They had no evidence to do it. They just did it because of Bill Johnston, Ron Boyder, and because the computers were brand new back then. Honeywell and all those computers. Before that, it was all done by hand. And suddenly, they were having to justify numbers that were plugged into machines that didn't make mistakes. And so suddenly, the Rangers were faced with hundreds of cases that were not solved. And people did not know it because, people were doing a lousy job of the hand count. So suddenly the computer said, hey, you got unsolved cases. So they decided to just up their record and make themselves look good. And that's what they decided to do. And then they found the face of the boogeyman. The boogeyman, Henry Lucas, 4 teeth, all bad.
Hey,
You
Bern.
remember I was taller than him? I'm bigger than him.
Oh, you could have whipped his butt. I remember
I could
Jim
do that with
Maddox.
anyone, but yes, I could have.
I remember Jim Maddox the first time he met Henry Lucas, and he came into the hallway of the DA's office and said, "Vic, I think a decent-sized woman could whip his ass."
Well, here's the thing. I'm a woman. I'm Carolyn Cervenka. I knew Carolyn Cervenka. That's why. You remember, you did that special for me.
Yes.
Because I was from Taylor, and I said, no, you got to find out what happened to Carolyn Cervenka for me. And I made you do it. You remember, and you did.
Yeah.
Thank you. And they have you believing that this horrible, toothless, the man's body was completely covered in nicotine. He was 5'7". He weighed maybe 150 pounds. He's out here with Otis hitchhiking, and women from everywhere are going, "Oh yeah, baby, I'm gonna pick you up."
Hey, I hate to do this.
You looking good to me, baby. I'm sorry. I don't know of any woman alive that would have picked up a hitchhiking Henry Lucas. Certainly, anyone could do better than that, especially Carolyn Cervenka. Jesus Christ. You're not going to say some Taylor girl is going to pick up Henry. It's an insult to women all over the world. We got better taste than that.
That's funny, but it's true.
As far as your actions in the Henry Lee Lucas investigation, would you do anything differently now?
I would like to think that I would. I've been through so much, and I've seen my wife cry herself to sleep too many nights. I might do it different and just leave it alone. But I have a little boy that I'm trying to raise to do what's right, And if I'm going to tell him to do what's right, I think I've got to do what's right, regardless of the consequences.
And feel free to visit Bernie's blog. It is called I'm Mad Too, Harry, and you can find it through a simple Google search.
Thank you for listening to the Vic Feazell Show podcast. We're a primary source podcast. We talk about people we've known, things we've experienced. We're a primary source podcast. For more information, visit vicfeazell.com. Leave us a comment or a review. Subscribe to our YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook pages. And thank you for listening. Share us with your friends.
This is Texas singer-songwriter Brian Burns, and I've been to Waco, Hico, Hondo, Navasota, Winsboro, Jacksboro, Hillsboro, Santa Rosa, Austin, Houston, Galveston, Texarkana, Frisco, Buffalo, Conroe, Corsicana, and that's just in the last week. Keep a safe pace, folks. Relax and drive laid back, because Texas is a laid-back place. And if you've been in a car wreck, call Vic Feazell at 877-WITH-VIC.
With principal offices in Waco and Austin, Texas.